Yo, what is good everyone? In this video, we're going to be talking about how to take back control of your life in areas like human behavior, dopamine, and motivation. So some sources that have helped me create this video are like Dr. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Ann Lamke, Caffeine Blues, this book I read on, and on coffee, and just overall insights and knowledge I've collected throughout the years on this area. So I wanted to share it with you guys, so let's get right into it. So in your brain, there are these things called neurons. And these neurons, they communicate with your reward system with this neurotransmitter called dopamine. Now, dopamine has been associated with being this sort of pleasure molecule, right? And it's basically this chemical in your brain that what happens is it gets released when there's an anticipation for a reward. So through evolution, through history, what has happened is that as different behavior is done by like an organism or anything like that, eventually it registers in its brain or just somewhere in its biology. If I do this behavior, I'm going to get a reward. And if I register that, right, in my body, then what's going to happen is, hey, there's going to be a future anticipation. If I do that behavior again, am I going to get that reward? And if you do it, then, hey, I got the reward, right? Like, go eat a donut right now. It's probably going to feel good and taste good, right? So you can probably anticipate that, hey, if I eat another donut, or if I smoke another cigarette, or if I drink another booze, whatever, that I'm going to get rewarded for it. So that's basically what happens here. It's not the dopamine isn't released when you're doing the thing. It's released when there's going to be an anticipation of the thing that gives the reward. That's something I didn't understand a long time ago. But that it does make sense that, hey, like that's where the reward comes from. And then, for anyone who's struggled with like porn, all these other bad habits, it's like when you get into the actual activity, that's why the activity doesn't hit as good anymore. And that's why it makes sense. It's because what's actually happening is that there's this anticipation, like we're these pattern recognition machines. And as a result of that, we can like kind of patternize and predict into the future and be like, hey, if something happens or if this occurs, then there's likely going to be a reward there, right? So that's how dopamine plays in your mind. And there's this concept called in neuroscience called motivational salience. So what it is just like your brain's ability to highlight stimuli from the environment where, hey, if I do this, is it going to be something extremely rewarding or aversive as a whole? And if we recognize that some behaviors, some things we do, they're more rewarding compared to others, then that's what is registered in our brain. Whereas if we know that, hey, if I touch a stove right now, or if I do something and I just slap you, then no, there's going to be pain involved and you don't want to do that, right? When we were young, we all probably touched a hot stove. And what happens when you touch a hot stove? Well, you get burnt and it hurts and your body has highlighted that to not do it again. And the way also I wanted to touch on this because I feel like it's very important. Like I mentioned earlier about we anticipate these different events, and that's why over time that we can get trained into these habits, whether they're healthy or unhealthy. And that's what would be giving us this dopamine. And the thing is, you have to understand that the brain registers all these different events as ones and zeros. So you could get the same exact high from, let's say, eating sugars as if you were maybe just high on life. From the state you're in, feeling good about yourself, it's still a 1 and 0 at the end of the day. It's just what you've been pre-trained on, for instance, right? And what we have to understand is that when we go more towards something, right? Like let's say you get into a habit of smoking. What's going to happen is next time you pick up the vape or whatever, there's going to be this prediction that if I do this event, I'm going to get like this high off of it. All right. But what happens when you don't pick up the vape and you don't get the high or whatever it is? Well, now what's going to happen is that there is going to be this prediction error and it's going to be more painful to not do the thing. So because you've raised your dopamine level, like everyone has like these like dopamine levels, and the more stimuli and the more things you add onto this baseline of dopamine that has to basically keep you functional, the more dopamine you're going to basically need in your body in order to operate as like a functional being. For instance, if you are overly stimulated with caffeine all the time, and like all these different things that are giving you dopamine, you're going to require a higher baseline just to operate functionally on a day-to-day basis, because that's your baseline of dopamine. And if you miss that morning coffee, if you miss that that middle of the day coffee, you're going to feel like absolute shit. So that's, you have like this baseline dopamine, and the way you can fix that baseline is by completely resetting it. So we'll get to that in just a bit, but I just wanted like to highlight that if we have these raised baselines and we raise it even more with like adding all these other negative habits and stuff like that, then it's going to require a lot of us, or a lot from us, just to be functional. And that can significantly decrease your ability to perform at your peak, to operate normally and healthily, to have a good sense of well-being, and significantly just impacts many areas of life. So we'll get to that in just a sec. But in essence, you have to understand that these are all just pre-trained behaviors that you've whether picked up consciously or unconsciously. So understand that the control is literally within your power. And just at the end, you kind of have to think of yourself almost as if you're a machine. And by that, like as I said earlier, that the brain is just registering these different information it's getting from the environment, from your body, as just simple ones and zeros. Now, it sounds kind of flat when you say it like that, hey, like, oh, I'm just a machine. Like, I understand, like, you have this consciousness and all this. So don't just take it as like surface stuff like that. But when I say that, it's just like, in a way, helped liberate me and free me, and gave me the power to realize that, hey, I have self-mastery over myself. And if I just frame it this way, I have control to take back control of my life, remove habits, be able to control how much I consume of, like, let's say, like, like we're all human. Every once in a while, maybe I'll have a drink of like wine or something like that, or maybe go do something like have a cheat day. Like, sure, I can do it, but I have self-control over that. Now you also have that power. And I was able to reframe it that way where, hey, like, it's just a simple variable in my mind. And I know if I do this, that there's going to be a reward, but then I also have the power and control within myself to not do it again. So it was freeing in a way like that. So you have to realize that these are all just pre-trained behaviors, whether you picked up consciously or unconsciously. And in the end, what is going to liberate you is how much pain is involved in the activity or behavior and how much pleasure is involved in it. When I wanted to quit, right, with smoking and stuff like that, there was a lot of pleasure involved into it, but then there was raising pain over time. I wanted to quit because I knew I didn't want to do that anymore, right? And specifically, this is with vapes. And what I realized that over time, like I got this from Tony Robbins, is that you have to associate so much freaking pain to the habit, the behavior, that's not going to make you want to do anymore. And I was pretty extreme with this. I would visualize myself dying and all like this like crazy shit, just so I wouldn't be engaging in behavior. And when the pain surpassed the pleasure, which is on this side, I have no motivation to do it, because I know if I do it, like, hey, like this can give me potentially cancer, can like fuck up my energy levels, all this different stuff. And on top of, like, I have to waste money and time and just like even have like these open thought loops about like, oh, where's my vape? It's running out. Like all this crap. It's just a complete waste of time. It's just a liability in your life. So you can also realize that you can crank up and down these different levels of pain and pleasure with any habit, any behavior you're doing. And now it's more rewarding for me to be healthy, to optimize my life, to feel more good on a daily basis, to run on clean, natural energy on a daily basis without like really stimulants or, things like these artificial chemicals and stuff like that. It's much more pleasurable for me to do these things, whereas prior it wasn't, because I was just, my baseline of dopamine was so high above just base level, where I was using all these things. I added so much into my life just to function at this level. Whereas when I started removing all these things, now they're just the most basic things in my life. Keep me motivated, keep me high on life, and just keep me motivated just to do random things, right? Like record this video, learn new cooking dishes I can do on a daily basis, and all like these little things that I wouldn't be doing if I was like overly stimulated with like these artificial chemicals and all that crap. So just understand that this is all within your control. You can crank up and down how much pleasure you're getting and how much pain you're getting, whether it's physical or completely fabricated in your mind. Now, really, like, just to come into closing with everything I just said, I kind of hinted at what I was talking about just prior, but if you really want to take control of your life now, online, it's been popularized doing all like these dopamine detox challenges and all these things. But just realize, if you're going to try to cut everything out at the same time, it's going to be quite difficult to sustain that. And the most efficient way I found that has worked for me to take back control of my life with like all these different chemicals and all these stimulants and all these things like that is just by focusing on one thing at a time I can remove out of my life. So rather than adding into your life, remove things from your life so you can operate at like a clean baseline level. And when you're at this clean baseline level, it's crazy. I'm telling you, like, I'm doing stuff now that I wouldn't be doing prior because I'm just like overly stimulated. I'm lazy, and the only high I get is from like all like these things I was adding into my life, whether it's vapes, it's alcohol, or whatever it may be, right? Just mindless scrolling, social media, that could be an addiction. So when you remove all these things, you get more motivated because your brain is now looking for things in order to motivate itself, or not motivate itself, to find rewards from. Because if you don't have that thing there anymore, which is like your vape pen or you're smoking weed or whatever it is, if you don't have that thing there anymore, now your brain is looking for other ways it can get rewarded. So this is kind of what I mean back earlier when I said ones and zeros. Just find another one, which in this case is a reward you can get from something, whether it's working out or whatever it may be, where from that's where the reward comes from. And it really just starts with removing one thing at a time. So if, for instance, your diet sucks right now, and that's like the thing where you'd feel like, hey, if I remove this from my life, I'd feel the most happiest, then fix your diet. If, say, you have a bad smoking addiction, then fix that. If you have maybe an alcohol addiction, then fix that. It could be anything. I'm not saying it has to be like some sort of chemical addiction here. It could be being a workaholic. It could be being, I don't know, something else that is giving you a false sense of reward where you know if you should just cut it out. So just ruthlessly cut it out, and then over time compound that behavior with more things you're removing. And then you'll see your motivation is going to skyrocket when you can just literally go to like the baseline default level you with like, without all of these additional things you've added onto yourself through life, through just unconsciously following habits or just things you've done just because you've done it. It's crazy how much more motivated you're going to be. It's wild. So just try that out. So that's going to be all. That's how you can easily just take back control of your life. It's really just realizing all the things, the behaviors you're doing on a daily basis. Some of these things that you're doing, they could be zapping you from natural energy. You could be allocating into something productive, something more useful, something you'd find more joy in, rather than something that is artificially stimulated or fabricated with chemicals or just like wrong incentives from companies that are keeping you in using their products. So that's going to be all for the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some insights out of it. And if you love that, then you'll also love the insights I share in my newsletter that can go directly straight into your inbox. On occasion, I'll find some cool information, cool insights, and share it right with you there. And other than that, I hope to see you in another video. So peace out. I'm Jan.